Welcome to Telltales. I'm Mike Nicoletti. Every week, along with my co-hosts Jason Wallace and Hunt Lawrence, we bring you the cash flow memo. Get it at telltales.us. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to dive deep into energy, technology, and healthcare. So download the memo now and get started.
The following conversation is intended for informational purposes only. You should always do your own work to determine if an investment is suitable for you.
Okay, we'll start. Nothing new on Exhibit C because there's no change. I mean, the macro change is in Lebanon, and that certainly has stiffened the price of oil, as we're going to see on the Exhibit B page. But it looks to us like kind of a temporary strengthening of the price of oil, which is welcome. If you turn to Exhibit B, the price last Thursday for the near month was 72, and the 25 price and the 26 price is both increased by about $1. So all that is good. In terms of gas pricing, it's a little better. The 25 price at 320 and the 26 price at 360 are holding pretty well. The near month, which I guess last Thursday was October 227, that's a very low price. But if you look at the progression of November, December, January, and it comes through, we should be in the $3 range by the time December starts to get trading. If December is in the low twos, we'll have a different kind of problem. I'm very proud of the revision on Exhibit A. This is the cash flow statement for the U.S. government, and CBO, Congressional Budget Office, I guess it is, has come out with new numbers. And I kept saying that I thought the difference between the old numbers, which were around $1.6 trillion deficit, and the $1.9 trillion that they were predicting, had something to do with student loan forgiveness, and that's just not true. What has happened is the revenues are about the same and the expenses are higher. It's really concerning. If you look at all other, which is after Social Security and defense and Medicare, before COVID, all other was $910 billion. During COVID, it got to 2.75 and 2.94. In fiscal 22, arguably the first year after COVID, that number started to come down. It was $1.9 trillion. And then in fiscal 23, which ended in September 23, was $1.3 trillion, but it's going up in 24. That's very discouraging. I think part of that is all that legislation that was passed by the Biden-Harris administration to support, their priorities, onshoring and building chip factories and whatnot. And now the Congressional Budget Office shows that declining again in 25, but neither of the political candidates is discussing the need to deal with that. Really, what should be happening at $1.3 trillion last year, it should have been like 200 billion lower this year, but it isn't. And in terms of the revenue, 4.9 trillion is up significantly from 4.4 trillion. But if your spending goes up by $700 billion, now some of the 700 trillion, if you look at the interest line, in fiscal 23, that was 650 billion. Now it's 890 billion for this year. So some part of that is interest. But I think we promise not to talk about politics in the podcast, but whoever's elected is really going to have their handcuffs on. I mean, starting new programs that will call for new spending will be extremely difficult. Mike, Jason, anything to add?
Maybe the idea of letting Elon run loose and find efficiencies isn't so bad after all.
We promised last week to take up a third company, with not to say sell your shares in it, or not to say don't have it on your list, your watch list to make a future investment, but just to be aware that the Magnificent Seven, which have been way more than half of the increase in the indexes, each one of them have problems. And I think we did a pretty good job of covering Apple on the first Wednesday, and kind of, I think, as Jason said, an underwhelming product day. And then I think we did a pretty good job on Alphabet or Google last week, and we said it was going to be a secret what we were going to do this week. Well, the brain trust here, Mike and Jason and Hunt, we're going to do Amazon this week. So I think Mike or Jason has to lead off with just before Mike and I talk for about 20 minutes every morning. I don't know whether you agree with this, Jason, but Mike said it's harder to find flaws in the Amazon strategy than either Apple being slow to adopt AI or Google being challenged by AI as an alternative to search. And with that as a feed-in, Mike and I have agreed, since we're together sitting here, to turn the next 3 or 4 minutes over to Jason. So off you go, Jason. Where are the problems with Amazon?
I agree. It is tough to find the problems with Amazon. The only real weakness is a short-term weakness in potentially the consumer confidence and the consumer spending. Otherwise, it's pretty tough to find fault in what they're doing. I don't know if you guys have a good idea on that. I was kind of struggling. One aspect that I like, which is the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing here, is their 3PL business, so their delivery network, the Prime delivery network that they've built. It's huge. It's significant. It's the biggest delivery network in the U.S. now, and just the increase in business they're doing, selling third-party products on Amazon's e-commerce side, is pretty amazing, and maybe not priced in.
So I think that's a good direction to go, Jason. I broke down their risks by separated AWS from retail, and then I broke down the risks as like what could kind of affect those. AWS has got competition, Google Cloud and Oracle and Azure, but it's still the leading hyperscaler.
Do you think it's losing market share?
A rising tide lifts all ships. So I think even if some of the others have been quicker to adopt NVIDIA hardware, for example, it actually ended up being a limitation. It's an interesting point. So it's sort of a limitation for Amazon when everybody wanted to get a hold of NVIDIA hardware, is that they obviously had the most demand and they had no practical way to fill it. So as NVIDIA was allocating GPUs to everyone, they obviously preferred the ones that were going to run the NVIDIA DGX cloud product, which Amazon wasn't going to do. They have a way they do their stuff. So they probably got lower allocation in those early instances than they otherwise would have, and as a result, maybe lost some potential customers that would have been there for a long time. So that's the downside to being large. In the case of Google Cloud, they didn't have very many Google Cloud customers, so it was all incremental. So that side of the house, I mean, that was the biggest.
What about Microsoft Azure has made their deal with OpenAI, Amazon apparently with Anthropic, but then when I see those press releases, Google's they're all alongside
sort of in it
Anthropic.
too. Yeah.
So what's the chance that Amazon starts to be perceived as falling behind on AI like Apple? Well, not like Apple, but I mean, is it possible that Azure is, with their embrace of OpenAI, or what else they're doing, will have an edge on Amazon Web Services?
My theory is that Amazon's approach to AWS is that they're going to provide all the infrastructure so that other people can build whatever they want to build. It could be a problem if, whether it's OpenAI plus Microsoft or Google, gets to super intelligence in 5 years or whatever, and it obfuscates the need for an AWS.
Jason is much better on this stuff than Mike and myself combined. I'm not much good at all. What do you think, Jason, about this commentary?
I like what Amazon's doing in AI by not locking themselves into any one vendor. So you can go on AWS and run a Llama model. You can run Anthropic. You can run Hugging Face, and then probably a whole host of other open source models. And it's something AWS has done in the past too, is they've offered these prepackaged services that other people have built for a number of years. They'll offer you to license that and run that in AWS. And then once the market kind of decides who the winners are, the winning strategies, then they'll go and rebuild it essentially on their own, optimized for their own hardware, and then offer it as an in-house service.
Could you give an example of that? Because that's definitely a strategy they've done on multiple occasions. Can you give an example of a product that did it, like whether it's MongoDB?
Yeah, so MongoDB, I was going to go with Elasticsearch, but either of those two. So they're kind of document store databases. Not to get in the weeds, but you put a document into a text document into the database, and then you can textually search it. So think like keyword Google type search for documents in your database. So in MongoDB's case, they allowed you to license that MongoDB service. It's a separate company, a separate business, and run it within Amazon. And you paid a fee to Amazon for the hardware, and then a chunk of that was routed over to MongoDB, and they got their licensing revenue out of it. Once they realized, the market for document storage databases solidified around a couple players, and they were one of them, they decided to replicate that service and make it an in-house service of their own. So then you essentially paid AWS for the same service. I think they offered it cheaper because now they're optimized on their own hardware, and then they don't pay the royalty to MongoDB. And a lot of the interfaces that you talk to that database are copied. So there was really low lift to move from one version to the next. And they've done that a number of times, and they catch a lot of flack for doing it because they're essentially ripping off other people's ideas, but that's kind of normal in tech. And I think they're going to do that again here with AI. So I don't dislike how they're approaching AI by kind of sitting on the sidelines and waiting. And then I have a longer term vision that the model, the companies building the models themselves, the foundation models, the value really isn't there. The value is in the data. So the company that has the foundation model itself, maybe those get a lot cheaper than OpenAI's current valuation right now. So there's a future where maybe they pick up Anthropic for pennies on the dollar of what it would go for today.
That's good.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a similar approach in AWS that they're kind of taking in their retail business as far as developing their own in-house products to compete against their customers.
But they've stopped doing that so much.
Right.
To be more friendly to third party.
Exactly. Maybe someday they'll have to do that in software too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a quick break for a message from Oak Cliff Sailing.
Hi, it's Wednesday again, and there's a lot going on. This time what we have the Melgist that have back from Stamford Yacht Club, and they're headed out to the White Bread series in the golf cart, headed down to Far 40 Black to grab the mast and get the boat out of the water and off the keel. This lovely trailer and Clifford the Red Truck combo are headed to Newport with River, the dog, to get the sales from OC86 because she did not sell. She's still available. Tonight is the last Wednesday night of the series, and then tomorrow, Thursday night, match racing drills will happen. And during the day, the kids were out pickling an engine and getting it started. Any other organization getting an engine on a FAR 40 started after it had been seized would be major. For Oak Cliff, it's just a Tuesday. So you never know what's going to be happening on any given day at Oak Cliff, but there's always something going on. And the exciting news is we're coming to you this winter. Go to oakcliffsailing.org or email me and we will set you up with a tour where we will come, we will coach on anything that we've got going on between match racing, the Olympics, the America's Cup, which they won 2 races today, and we will be able to help design a program in your hometown. Give us a call. 516-802-0368, and we hope to see you soon.
And now back to the show.
I think we got some other stuff to cover, including one that's very near to Jason's heart, and that is there was an antitrust complaint filed on pharmacy benefit managers and PBMs, and we know from this is United Healthcare is the largest on page 19, and I updated that last weekend and or the weekend before, and Jason has been pointing to this as a problem in the healthcare industry, and I'm sure that it kind of Jason feels much better about the antitrust effort for singling out PBMs, but over to you, Jason, for your commentary.
Yeah. So the FTC filed suit against the 3 largest PBMs, which is 80% of the market, and specifically for using the rebate system to push patients into higher cost insulin. And very timely is they had the CEO of Novo Nordisk testify in Congress yesterday, specifically around his GLP-1 weight loss drugs and the cost there. But the thing he pointed out is why he's hesitant to lower prices of that drug is that they did lower the price of the insulin that they produce and for sale in the U.S. And as a result of lowering the price, the PBMs dropped coverage of his insulin because they wanted to push patients to the higher cost version that had rebates, and the rebates get pocketed by the PBMs. So it kind of highlights the argument that the FTC is making against the PBMs, and it's a very opaque system of how they bill, and then the rebate that gets kicked back. And I don't think there's any argument to say that these companies are saving patients money anymore.
Any commentary while we're on page 19 on Lilly? There will be competition, I guess, is the answer. But Lilly seems to be going from victory to victory when you look at their results. Now, it's a very expensive stock. We have them here at 80 times free cash flow, but they are, they seem to be doing awfully well, across the board on trying to move their products through trials and into production.
Yeah, absolutely. But between the weight loss and type 2 diabetes drugs that they have there, and then the Alzheimer's treatments, they're doing really well. That said, I think we'll see next year with the Medicare price negotiations that they're going to key in on these GLP-1 drugs as something they want to negotiate, whether it's for the diabetics or for the weight loss version. So we knew competition was going to come for that in the next couple of years and drive prices down. There's a lot of research on pill form versions of these drugs, but that price pressure might come a lot sooner through the government next year.
Do you think, Jason, that the primary driver of that price pressure is going to be Medicare and Medicaid negotiations and not the insurers?
right now, that's what it looks like. The insurers are covering it.
Yeah, it seems they have less incentive to save costs so long as they are sure they can pass them on.
Right. Unfortunate part of our system.
Yeah.
Other antitrust. I was kidding with Mike. I don't know how the Justice Department and the FTC managed to get so much activity late in a presidential term. But you have the second suit on Google. And then we also have a Visa suit.
Yeah.
It's not updated, but we might as well turn to the Visa page, which is page 7. These are great businesses. I mean, they have good cash flow, they grow, and they're not terribly expensive. I mean, MasterCard and Visa at 30 times free cash flow for cash flow that grow, 9 or 10% a year is not excessive price. But apparently, the way Visa and MasterCard do their business, is going to be subject to some kind of review. And it definitely is a duopoly. I think it's fair.
Yeah.
And it's been a difficult duopoly for anyone else in payments to challenge.
Yep.
Doesn't Apple Pay use one of them? They just decided to, better to use Visa than to try to recreate. And then
I actually don't remember which one they use.
Yeah.
One of them. But yeah, nobody's really chipped into that. Like Discover was a payment network, and that never really paid off.
Any commentary on payments? It's very
Brian
hard.
and I talked about Visa a little bit, and he said, well, they've been sued for antitrust a lot. They've been fine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. One of the things, I used to own MasterCard, and I got discouraged because the merchants would sue all the time, class action suits saying MasterCard has misbehaved, and then they'd settle, but just another flank would come. So
yeah.
I started to look at my MasterCard's cash flow, making an allowance for those settlements, and unfortunately, so I disposed of the stock. But I would have made 3 or 4 times on my money from there. So mistake by me. But
they're probably the greatest network effect businesses that exist.
Yeah.
And they're hard to displace.
Right. Anything else on page 1? Any Tesla news or Microsoft news or?
Oh, Microsoft. The 3 Mile Island deal.
Yeah. I have a personal view on that, which Mike's been attending a conference, but I think an existing nuclear power plant is a good source of power, and but I think bringing on ones that have been closed, that's hard.
Yeah.
And small nuclear has been hard. So in terms of power demand, I think that nuclear is appealing, but I think the regulatory effort around, or the regulatory regime around nuclear plants just make them very difficult.
We haven't talked about this, but Apple recently updated the language in its document to include nuclear power as a clean source, as what they deem as clean.
Right.
If all of these big tech companies get behind nuclear, I mean, that's a lot of lobbying power. Is that enough to change the bureaucratic process that seems to be holding back our ability to create new ones? Or is that,
I think you got a fundamental problem, and you even see it in Japan, where they had Fukushima, and they wound up closing all their nuclear plants and then opening them gradually. But in order to open them, they had to get local support. It's very difficult to have a nuclear plant in your neighborhood.
Yeah, I heard the story about the one here, the most recent one, that never got approved. It got completed, but never started because it didn't get local approval from the local fire department.
Yeah, well, or just
or whatever.
Local opposition. on the software page, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Snowflake. I mean, Snowflake just doesn't seem to be able to, get to real free cash flow. It's kind of
they just
even free cash
issued
flow.
some convertible debt too, so that situation's not necessarily getting better.
Yeah.
It seems like they were behind on what they needed as far as product for this generative AI stuff, and now they're trying to catch up. And
Yeah.
it's taking more time than they'd like.
And then to give Jason credit, he was saying Oracle deserves a look a year ago or more. And what is it? How, in the few minutes we have left, Jason, what's the Cliff Notes version of what Oracle's been able to do? I mean, they had all those databases and they looked kind of obsolete and whatnot. And now all of a sudden they look like, one of the beneficiaries of more use of GPUs and upgraded data centers and what have you. What's the Cliff Notes version of what's happened there?
Yeah, so the Oracle databases were always the best. They were the most expensive. They scaled the largest for a single instance, and they were the best ones. But the reason being is they had a lot of levers you can pull and knobs you can turn to tune the database. And it really was a full-time job for someone on the software and IT teams to tune these databases. What they've been able to do is, over the years, push that as a cloud service. So no longer are you installing hardware in your own local data center or closet. And lately, they're using AI to do that tuning. So it's analyzing the usage metrics, the access patterns, and all the data coming out of the database on how it's performing. And then the AI will tune those metrics or tune the settings to make the database perform optimally. And they're having some success selling that version of the database. So that job really was a skill and an art, and those people were pretty well compensated for doing that. You're taking that person out of the loop now and replacing them with software who can do it in real time and make the adjustments as customers are accessing your database or internally, if it's an internal business intelligence product or the like. So it's really a value add. You can get the Oracle database performance now with AI managing it rather than a team of people. And then additionally, I think the personal relationship with Jensen and being able to get access to a lot of NVIDIA chips was a big help for them too.
Okay, he clearly had some vision that more data center capacity was going to be needed because they've staked out quite a bit of capacity,
Right.
And been able to kind of get ahead of a big shift.
Right.
Right. I think their goal is to double their data center capacity in a pretty short order. I wanted to say a year, but that seems pretty unrealistic.
Right. It'll be a secret which one of the 7 we take on next week, but just before we break off, any commentary on chips in general? The rumor of trying to merge Intel into Qualcomm or anything like that. I mean, we've made a commitment to not talk politics and not to beat up on Intel anymore. Here we're on page 3, but a merger into another chip design place, I guess, might have some logic. Or Mike or Jason?
Yeah, I think that there's 2 logical homes. Now that if you assume the government's comfortable with the fact that Broadcom's a U.S. company again, because if you remember, they moved to Singapore headquarters, and then they flipped back into the U.S.
Right.
So if they're comfortable with Broadcom potentially is on the table. Broadcom is well known for acquiring companies and making them extremely efficient. If they were to acquire Intel, they would eliminate a lot of jobs. It would probably be from an administration perspective, the less favorable one. Qualcomm, on the other hand, has a pretty large R&D budget, and when they were potentially going to be purchased by Broadcom, they put up a big fight to try to prevent it. So if it went to Qualcomm, that would be very interesting, because Qualcomm would have the leading ARM server designs that aren't in-house, because they have ARM server CPUs. They would have that and the best x86 GPUs, or at least in competition with AMD. So they would be able to service all these data center clients with some pretty interesting options. Presumably, Qualcomm doesn't want the fab, but I think you could justify selling the design business to Qualcomm if you could make a deal there.
Mm-hmm. In your thought, we've added Broadcom on our software page. Your thought is that the more logical acquirer in terms of making things work better at Intel quicker would be Broadcom, given their record.
Well, I think the real solution will be parts of it will go to Broadcom, parts of it will go to Qualcomm, and then the fab will be a standalone business. Because the fab's going to require a lot of capital. It has a lot of debt. It's got all the problems. And if you make that the standalone business that the federal government wants to support, you can kind of carve out the other stuff and actually get it in the hands of companies that want to own it. I don't think anybody wants to own the fab.
Yeah, but between Qualcomm and Broadcom's more likely to take responsibility for the fab and try to make it work.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Good. Well, we've added our 4 minutes that we missed at the beginning. Apologize. We'll start on time next week, and we will have another company, a secret till next week, to follow on. But just to recapitulate, as we take these companies on, doesn't mean come out of a position. It just means that these 7 companies, which have produced more than half of all the gains in our indexes, it's good to one a week look at what we're not saying that they're going to go out of business or anything. What we're thinking is that one or more of them may have kind of a flat several years because of these issues. So we'll, in the meantime, everyone be well and stay healthy, and we'll take up another one next week. Take care now. Bye-bye.
The views expressed on this podcast are the hosts alone and do not constitute an offer to sell or a recommendation to purchase or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security, nor a recommendation for any investment product or service. While certain information contained herein has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, neither the hosts nor any of their employers or their affiliates have independently verified this information, and its accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Accordingly, no representation or warranty, expressed or implied, is made as to, and no reliance should be placed on, the fairness, accuracy, timeliness, or completeness of this information. The hosts and all employers and their affiliated persons assume no liability for this information and no obligation to update the information or analysis contained herein in the future, and may or may not hold positions in the securities mentioned.